Joining me on the program now from the Shining Lights Trust, Dave Mann. Dave, kia ora, thanks so much for your time today.
Kia ora, Andrew.
Firstly, let's talk, because, social media is an area that you've been involved with for quite some time, in particular with the Hope Project's social media campaign this year for Easter. How did that go?
Yeah, no, really good. We've got 11 years of intentional engagement behind us. We're involved with marketing people. I've just come out of a meeting a couple of days ago, which is why I thought of it as a possible topic for an hour and a half, a 30-page pages of analytics around our Easter engagement. But yeah, we're engaging primarily on the Meta platform through Facebook and Instagram, as well as on the Google platform with Google AdWords and through YouTube.
Yep.
We're really clear on our goals. We, in some ways, represent Christianity as a whole to make sure there's Christian messages in public spaces where the public are, where no one else is sort of engaging to put them. Our three goals at Easter were to make Easter visible through images and through poems and words. Secondly, to prompt action, specifically to visit local churches. While thirdly, trying to encourage people to rethink the story, challenging the secular narrative of our nation with history. And in the data, we're looking at about 1.5 million engaging on Facebook, another 350 on Instagram, Lisa sort of around about 50,000 through the Google platforms, giving, say, a total of 1.9 million different people, 90% in New Zealand, with somewhere in the vicinity of 8 million interactions and specific content interactions numbered at 17,500. So it's all quite big data. There's a couple of tens of thousands of dollars put behind that. But also a lot of intentional strategy because it is a platform you can get Christian messages through to non-church audiences. And we believe that impression is an important part of a bigger picture.
There's certainly some impressive metadata, literally, in this case, and some big numbers in that space. For some people, though, to say, yeah, but what about us in our local church? You know, we've got somebody who, is happy to have a go on Facebook. Making sure that we make the most of this opportunity and, we're on the right platform for the right community. Where do we start with this, Dave?
Yeah, there's a number of different platforms. And so I'd say the best advice for a local church is to start by looking at what platforms your church members are on.
Okay.
And just to give an overview of it, and this is the hierarchy I would have, I think that Facebook's the most useful. It's got 4.048 million users in New Zealand, which is pretty phenomenal. The next would be Instagram, which is connected to the Facebook Meta platform. There's 2.5 million users. Instagram is more image and photo oriented, sort of you demonstrate a lifestyle. It's not so good for communicating information, but this is much more suited to youth. And I looked at some data, 58 times the interactions on Instagram compared to Facebook. So it's highly interactive, but it's not good for communicating information. So Facebook, Instagram, the next two down would be Pinterest with 1 million users and X or Twitter with 930,000. LinkedIn has 2.8 million New Zealand users, but it's really for business. And YouTube technically is social media, but our analytics show that you could even put money to boost to non-church audiences, you won't reach them. YouTube only gives a user what they watch commonly. And so if you try to boost, you'll end up with people in other countries who like your content. So a pastor, a church leader, find what your members are on, but probably Facebook and Instagram are going to be near the top of that list.
Interesting points there, and I just wanted to, I suppose, lean into one of those comments there, because how do we push beyond the algorithm? How do we push beyond our own echo chambers, particularly at a local church level? Are there tools that we can apply to say, you know what, I want to talk to people who live in a certain geographic area around where our church is based, who has perhaps similar interests to the people who go to our church, although not necessarily a spiritual overlap. Can you get that specific and targeted in terms of social media use?
Yeah, you can. There's pros and cons, and there's maybe quite a steep learning curve on some of these platforms. But yeah, absolutely you can. And so let's say you've got mainly music you're running as a church. Once a year, you could do a boost to your local town or city around the mainly music that you are running. And you could select females between the ages of, let's just say, 25 and 35 or 22 and 35, that kind of thing. You've probably captured most of the young mums, and then you could do a paid boost. And to be honest, in a town or $2 and $5 and $10 can go a long way.
Wow.
In a city, 10, 20, or $50 can go a long way because the extent that your money goes all depends on the demand there is, for putting ads out around different topics to people who might be interested in them. So, yeah, absolutely, you can do targeted promotion.
In terms of the sorts of things that you do, now this will be perhaps different depending on what's happening within the local church, but is it along the lines of, hey, we're a church, come to our event? Or should we be doing direct connections and presenting the gospel message in the social media space? Or do we make the connection, build the relationship, and then have those conversations? What's the strategy, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, how important is social media? I'd say it's a little bit important. In other words, personal connection and face-to-face time is far more important
Yeah.
than
Okay.
online stuff. Even in our own work, we get huge connections across the New Zealand population through our intentional social media, but it's just a small blip on a person's journey toward faith.
Yeah.
But I will also say that that actually does matter. And so a church needs to give thought, first of all, to how many posts per week. I suggest two is a good idea. But you're going to have to then have a content plan, which is what you're digging into.
Yep.
But to achieve that, you'll also need a team. But for content, I would say, our goals, I articulated three goals earlier, and just to reiterate those, because it's the logic of how we engage that delivers the results. And we've found this through a lot of intentional engagement. We're trying to make Easter visible to
Yep.
prompt action, visiting a church, and we're trying to help people rethink the secular narrative,
Mm-hmm.
in
Yep.
terms of Christian history. For a local church, I would suggest two very specific goals, and they would be build faith and build connections.
Mm-hmm.
So every piece of content that you deliver, with both church and non-church audiences in mind, how do you build faith and connection? This means you don't put religious jargon in there.
Yeah.
You're careful about the way that you promote. But then I would suggest we add boosting if we want to get to the wider audience. So tell stories, put testimonies up there. Find stories about New Zealand history and the significance of Christianity. So, Hope Project is actually now creating 1 minute videos on the significance of Christianity to New Zealand's history.
Mm-hmm.
Find those and post them. Find stories about why we might believe the faith to be true. This builds faith. Why Christians Believe.nz, 7 videos. Long story short, New Zealand Made,
Yeah.
9 videos. Go to creation.com, subscribe for their Facebook posts, like their page, and they get send out amazing little images and things on reasons to believe the faith to be true. So amongst the mix of 2 posts per week with a plan and a team to monitor engagement with it, start to post things like that build faith. But I would also say then look for the seasons of the year and then look for the events,
Okay.
because these are the connection points. So defend that Christ is a part of Christmas, but invite people to something.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're running a marriage course or something like that, then do a promotion to, I would actually go females 25 through 40.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because a man who goes to a marriage course turns up because his wife bought him there.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so put just 10 or 20 bucks behind a boost as a part of your outreach and marketing. And a person who doesn't turn up then looks at it, and even if they don't turn up, and sees it and goes, oh, yeah, the church is doing good stuff in our community. I've forgotten they even existed.
Yeah.
That's the significance.
In terms of the platform that you're on, and I mean, this is literally the parable of the sower. We're scattering seed, and some falls on stony ground, some goes amongst the thorns, etc. But I suppose moving beyond just your church Facebook page, or even, this is the Facebook page for the people that go to this church, connecting with other clusters, if you like, connecting with perhaps a community Facebook page, or having a way of being able to get your messages more broadly than just the people who already know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if a church is running an event that could be relevant to a wider audience, you can put something onto a community notice board, a
Yep.
community Facebook page, and the like, and that really has value to it. But yeah, I think it was in the inference of what I said prior, and it is really important. A lot of churches and a lot of organizations only serve their own interests.
Yeah.
And we might be Christians and we say we're serving Jesus, but we only ever really promote something that's of benefit to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, our basic data would say, let's imagine that the personal witness of Christians in New Zealand connects a Christian message at some level with 10% of the non-church attending population.
Yeah.
Let's say that the community engagement of our churches, even though the Christian message is quite rarely involved in it, connects with another 10%. That leaves 80% of the non-church attending population with almost no one trying to connect a Christian message with them in an average year.
Yeah.
I think it is the responsibility of New Zealand Christians and churches to connect with the entire population. And this is where social media, as a place to build faith and build connections, a small part of a bigger picture, has real value. Because we can be promoting the marriage course. We can be sharing the story of someone who found new hope and faith. They got out of alcoholism, like a friend of mine, and it was belief in the higher power, who they now say is Jesus, who actually made that difference. It can be the reasons for faith out of science. This can bring hope. Marriage courses, parenting courses. Sarah in our office the other day looked through Right Now Media. They have a course for being single and parenting. Absolutely stunning. Again, we can post all of these things online, boost them with $10. We're making valuable connections for the gospel, even if not just for our church.
And hey, we're back to the parable of the sower briefly. Yes, some falls on stony ground, some gets eaten up by birds, but the seed that you keep in the bag, that doesn't do anything. Some of it does fall on good soil. Just finally on this one, a bit of a good news story. Somebody who was a bit, certainly not pro-church or pro-Christianity, a wonderful testimony of how social media transformed their life.
Yeah, it's quite rare on social media that someone who's an antagonist will turn around and actually admit faith or admit any change. But we had someone come in as an antagonist a couple of years ago into our social media, and his basic statement was that he thinks faith in God is absolute rubbish. He'd actually had a death experience. He experienced nothing. He was dead, and the doctor said, "Yep, when you die, you're dead." And we just came back to him with a gracious reply. He came back saying, "What about suffering with all the problems?" We came back saying, "Well, Job made all of those same complaints. You sound a little bit like him." He comes back and he says, "Well, I'd be interested to read that." So we sent him a Bible and he read the book of Job. Then he came back with 20 other questions. And after I'd engaged a number of them, I said, "Look, at the end of the day, it comes down to faith. The weight of reason might say there is a God, but we have to just make a decision." He goes silent, then he comes back and he says, "It's amazing how different I feel now that I've chosen to believe in God, even though it all still makes no sense to me." And my connection with him concluded when he decided to send a courtesy note back, basically to say, "I've decided it's time that I go to a church. I'm now looking to visit some of the churches near to me." So, we don't know where a person's at. We don't know what part of the journey we are in. We can be encouraged. Our efforts do make a difference. Social media is a part of the picture, not the main part, but it can be a part.
Particularly in combination with prayer as well, and the occasional boost. Dave, thank you so much for your wisdom and your experience in this matter. Thanks so much for joining us on the program. If people wanted to find out more, if they're saying, "Hey, that sounds all good, can I connect? Can I find out some more about those tips and advice?" What's the best way of them doing so, Dave?
I've got no way other than going online and starting to engage and potentially just try something in social media. Be yourself, be authentic, don't preach, keep it as personal statements and stories and see what God does.
Hey, Dave, thanks very much for joining us today.
Right, cheers.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.